Can you sell a house when the seller is in jail? Yeah, great question. And this is something that happened to me about 10 years ago. We're going to talk about it on the other side of the intro. My friends, this did happen to me about 10 plus years ago. There was a home just north of Toronto where the seller was incarcerated. And in fact, I partnered with the listing agent on this one. He reached out to me because I knew the area a little bit better, and we partnered together and got this home sold. But what an interesting story. What an interesting, concept of how this unfolded. Of course, it allowed me this opportunity to learn a lot, as well as many of the other agents. And yes, he got a listing, my partner got a listing where the seller had been incarcerated. Imagine that listing presentation. Anyways, here's how it happened, and then we'll kind of unfold the story a little bit. So this home had actually sat vacant for about 10 plus years. And at that time, the seller was, of course, incarcerated in jail for that amount of time. And prior to him going into jail, you would almost call it a hoarder environment. There's lots and lots and lots of items left in that house. I don't know how they lived in, or how he lived in the house, because there was kind of pathways all throughout it, and we had to empty it a little bit. We did it as best as we could, just so we could have showings within the house. And of course, we were going to be selling it as is, and of course with the lawyer's direction and everything like that. So the son, who actually brought forward this listing to my partner, that's where the listing presentation obviously happened, and my partner had to put together a plan on how we were going to get this home sold. Obviously, with the seller, the actual owner of the property being incarcerated. So a couple of things happens there, and with the lawyer's obviously direction, as I mentioned, the son was able to obtain power of attorney for this property, which meant they had the signing authority from the actual owner to what they could do with the property, and that was obviously to dispose of the property. Disposition of the property is the technical term of it, but we won't get into the technicalities of it. So this was pretty interesting. Of course, when you go into a house that hasn't been really lived in 10 years, you can expect many things wrong with it. And there was a lot of things wrong with it. Back split property. So you can imagine what that is. You walk in, you have, your living room and kitchen on the main floor. Then you walk up to the 3 or 4 bedrooms, and then you walk down to the, maybe a big family room and another bedroom, if I can recall correctly. And then you walk back towards the front of the house in the basement, and then there's another basement. There might have even been another basement. I don't recall that specifically, but of course, as we all know, houses aren't built forever. You got to take care of them, and this home needed everything. Obviously, it hadn't been updated in many, many, many years. So from a decor perspective, but really, obviously, or also from in a sense, a structural perspective, new windows. Of course, the roof had been long gone. Meaning it was leaking and things like that. So there was water within the house, especially when it rained incredibly hard. I remember I was doing a showing and it was pouring there one day, inside and outside. So we had to get this home sold as quick as possible. And at this time in this area north of Toronto, there were not a lot of fixer-uppers like this. This had been obviously a home that had been left to basically rot for many, many years, and all the homes around it were beautiful, refurbished homes or infill properties. That means homes knocked down and rebuilt. And this was definitely an opportunity for somebody to go in and purchase this home. And with it being 10, I think it was about, had to be 10 years ago, maybe even more, this home garnished a lot of attention, because when we came out at the asking price, we thought it was a fair asking price. The strategy was obviously to list the property and then have a 24-hour irrevocable. So that meant the lawyer was able to review the offer or offers, and of course have an offer date. Well, wouldn't you know it, I hosted 2 open houses there. We had well over 100 groups through the open houses. We had to, I had had to ask more agents to come help me and show the property because of the state of the property. And of course, the number of people, the number of showings on this property. And in fact, I believe we had approximately 25 offers on this property as well. So, of which I submitted 5 for customers for that had come through the property and reached out to me and asked if I could write an offer. I said, yes, here's the high level details. I will not be negotiating on your behalf, but I will be, at that time we could have clients or customers, which meant I could represent or submit offers for multiple people. I gave them the guidelines and everyone knew that I was doing that. And wouldn't you know it, I think I had the second and third highest offers by the end of the day. It wasn't one of our offers that got accepted, but we had, it was well over 20 offers by the end of the night, and an offer did get accepted and closed quite quickly. So can you sell a house if you have the seller that's incarcerated or in jail? The answer is yes. Of course, there's some legal pieces that have to come into play, like the power of attorney. Who has that? Sometimes it could be another family member or a business consultant or somebody or a representative that the lawyer or the bank will provide a representative in some cases. Now, this home was free and clear, so there was no banking or no lending ramifications on this, so that made it a lot easier when there's no mortgage on the property, so that's a good thing. And of course, the lawyer was able to work through with the son the power of attorney. And our listing agent, my business partner at the time, was able to walk the son or the power attorney through the process and get a deal done. But it was pretty interesting, very, very interesting. And in fact, when I received inquiries of the property, it was only listed for a week, and I received a number of inquiries of the property. Of course, there was news articles about the seller. We won't get into that just over this podcast, about the seller committing the crime. In fact, so we disclosed that, and because that might have a gauge or a preference on whether or not somebody wants to submit an offer, because it was a pretty heinous crime. Fortunately for all parties involved, the crime was not committed at the property. It was committed elsewhere, but in some cases, that's going to have an effect on whether or not you want to own this property or not, or a future buyer might not want to own this property just based on some of that information. So we disclosed all that information, and I showed it a number of times. Of course, the open houses and the offers that we put together. But man, what an experience that was! I got to learn the process from it, especially being a newer agent way back then. So yes, you can sell a property if the seller has been incarcerated or is incarcerated, is in jail. Of course, you need the right pieces in place, a great lawyer, power of attorney, and a great listing agent and team to get this thing done. So there you have it. You know, when you've been in this business as long as I have, you do learn some pretty interesting things, and you see some interesting things. You get to experience some interesting things. So there you have it, my friends. We'll see everybody in the next episode. Goodbye for now.